The Glenbrook Vintage Railway is a heritage line in the Franklin district, as opposed to the Michael district or the Trevor district, and it's located around 45 minutes drive south of central Auckland. It's a restored section of the old Waiuku Branch, on which heritage trains first started running in 1977. That's 48 years ago at the time of filming. These days, the GVR runs steam-hauled passenger trains on a seasonal basis from Labour Weekend to King's Birthday Weekend, and I recommend looking at their website for full details on the specific days when they're running. Although, for the record, this video is not sponsored by the GVR. In any case, the GVR also runs mainline excursions with a set of yellow coaches hauled by diesel locomotives DC4818 and DBR1254. Either those diesels or steam locomotive WW644, and as an aside, this is the first time I've tried recording a voiceover on a brand new microphone. It was nice to be here outside of the busy Christmas lights event, since I struggled to handle the huge crowds at the 2022, 2023 and 2024 events. Come to think of it, I was also overwhelmed by the crowds at the Day Out with Thomas event in 2024, especially when I was actually riding on the train. Before anyone asks, I have decided not to attend the 2025 Christmas event. On this occasion, WW480 was doing the honours, and her train consisted of open wagon VB624, passenger coaches A1162 and A1161, modified guards van F141, dining coach AF1152 and parlour coach A1452. Thinking back to A1452, I remember riding aboard this coach back in 2017, during the GVR's 40th anniversary celebrations. She's essentially a first-class coach, aboard which passengers get high tea refreshments, whatever high tea means, but the fare for this coach is considerably higher than a normal ticket. On this visit in October 2025, I decided to just get the normal adult ticket, which costs $27, and rode aboard A1162 for most of the journey to Victoria Avenue. Upon departure from Glenbrook, the Heritage Line initially runs parallel to another line that goes off to the Mission Bush steel mill, which, as far as I know, is New Zealand's only steel mill. Trains going to Mission Bush branch off of the North Island main trunk at Pairata, just north of Pukeoware, and initially run on parts of the original Waiuku Branch as far as Glenbrook. The section from Glenbrook to Mission Bush is a relatively late addition to the New Zealand railway network, only opening in 1968. Here is an example of one of the KiwiRail trains that you might see on the Mission Bush branch, recorded at Glenbrook on the 17th of February 2023. After a roughly 20 minutes trip from Glenbrook, we coasted down the hill into Victoria Avenue Station, a temporary terminus in the town of Waiuku. The station opened in 2010, and as far as I know, the GVR's ultimate goal is to extend the railway a further 500 metres to a permanent terminus at Tamakai Reserve. WW480 put on a good show as she got underway from Victoria Avenue, but there was a bit of wheel slip at first. Further up the line, the train stopped at Shakespeare Road for a photo run-by. Sadly, they're not letting people explore the workshop at Pukeoware anymore, so they're doing photo run-bys instead. And now we cruise down the 1 in 42 incline back to Pukeoware, where the WW had to stop to take on water. While I was disappointed in the workshop tour no longer happening, I see it as a consolation to have at least been able to get static shots of DE 507 and DSA 243 while the WW was taking on water. As we leave Pukeoware, we pass the ex-Auckland SD cab cars, which were rebuilt from former British Rail Mark II coaches, followed by the Martinus Rail ballast wagons. For context, the wagons were used on construction trains over in Australia, where they were hauled by DC locomotives that Martinus acquired from Kiwi Rail in 2020. As far as I know, the wagons came to New Zealand in 2023, initially to help with the IREX project in the South Island. Plans are still going ahead to order new rail-enabled ferries and upgrade the ferry terminals in Wellington and Picton, but the original IREX project was cancelled by the new coalition government in December 2023 due to severe cost overruns. In July 2025, after almost 2 years of doing nothing, the wagons were brought up to the GVR. As for the Martinus DCs, 2 of them, namely 4041 and 4571, came back across the ditch in late 2022, while their classmates 4444 and 4692 remained in Australia. Apparently, the intention was to use DC's 4041 and 4571 on City Rail Link works, but they initially sat around at Mission Bush for a while, then got moved to Glenbrook, where we found them in February 2023, and eventually they ended up in Wellington. In the end, DC's 4041 and 4571 did nothing during their brief return to New Zealand, and ended up being exported to Zambia in April 2024. Anyway, that's enough of the Martinus tangent. Let's get back to the GVR footage. In closing, I have mixed thoughts about this latest visit to the Glenbrook Vintage Railway. On the one hand, it was cool to see a steam locomotive of any kind in operation, even though I've already seen WW480 many times over the years, and there was another highlight in the form of the photo run by at Shakespeare Road. But on the other hand, I'm so used to the comparatively quiet Goldfields Railway that I was a bit overwhelmed by the busier train at Glenbrook. To an extent, this latest experience on the GVR reminded me of my day at the Mid-Hants Railway in England, although the GVR was not as overwhelming as the Mid-Hants. It's ironic that a heritage railway, of all places, could end up being such a stressful experience, although that probably says more about me and my inability to handle being in a small space with lots of other people around. especially when we're talking about coaches on a 3-foot 6-inch gauge railway. Initially, I didn't realise that, as this was on a long weekend, the GVR would be reasonably busy, and in spite of all the stressful experiences I've had on this line in the last 3 years, I still hold the GVR in high regard. I'll leave you with my footage of WW480 leaving Glenbrook with the 14:30 service to Victoria Avenue, her last round trip of the day.